Veterans finish a 5, a 20, a 25-year career. They join the federal civilian service. But even though they've had a lot of service to their country already, when they become a civilian employee for the first time, they're probationers. So the firing of this 30% workforce with disproportionate firing of probationers means that Donald Trump has now fired more veterans than any president in the history of the United States in just 6 weeks, and he's not done. Then add the VA cuts to it, and veterans are being punished in a very egregious way right now.
Democrats have proposed legislation that would protect veterans in their jobs. Do you think you can get Republican support for that?
We are going to try to do that as part of the budget reconciliation bill. Senator Blumenthal and I have also written to the president saying, put veterans back to work with back pay. Go ahead and do it right now before you make matters worse. We haven't gotten a response to the letter. We don't yet have Republicans signing on to legislation, but I'll tell you this, Jake, it's making them very, very worried, and it should. And we're going to keep being really loud about this until the president decides to quit taking it out on these veterans who have given so much to the country and have so much more still to give.
Let's turn to the Department of Education, because President Trump has been talking about eliminating the department altogether. We don't know when that move will happen or if it will happen, but theoretically it could happen any day. The Department of Education, for people who don't know this, is already the smallest cabinet level agency. It's mostly tasked with distributing federal funds to local schools, particularly to low income and disabled students. What happens if the Department of Education is shut down? Like, practically speaking, given the fact that most education is run on the state and local level, what would it mean for the DOE?
If you just thought that it was MAGA Republicans in Congress who are avoiding their constituents, canceling town halls, and getting mercilessly booed wherever they went, you would be wrong. And thankfully, you are wrong, because it's not just the Republicans in Congress, but elected Republicans across the country. That includes Virginia's Governor Glenn Yonan, who was so horrendously booed and ran out of town yesterday that he ended up ditching his wife as he was trying to avoid the angry mob rightfully calling him out. And we are going to get into that beautiful video, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, before we get into that video of Governor Glenn Yonan, I want to hear from the Democratic senator calling out why Virginians are so upset with him.
Veterans finish a 5, a 20, a 25-year career. They join the federal civilian service. But even though they've had a lot of service to their country already, when they become a civilian employee for the first time, they're probationers. So the firing of this 30% workforce with disproportionate firing of probationers means that Donald Trump has now fired more veterans than any president in the history of the United States in just 6 weeks, and he's not done. Then add the VA cuts to it, and veterans are being punished in a very egregious way right now.
Democrats have proposed legislation that would protect veterans in their jobs. Do you think you can get Republican support for that?
We are going to try to do that as part of the budget reconciliation bill. Senator Blumenthal and I have also written to the president saying, put veterans back to work with back pay. Go ahead and do it right now before you make matters worse. We haven't gotten a response to the letter. We don't yet have Republicans signing on to legislation, but I'll tell you this, Jake, it's making them very, very worried, and it should. And we're going to keep being really loud about this until the president decides to quit taking it out on these veterans who have given so much to the country and have so much more still to give.
Let's turn to the Department of Education, because President Trump has been talking about eliminating the department altogether. We don't know when that move will happen or if it will happen, but theoretically it could happen any day. The Department of Education, for people who don't know this, is already the smallest cabinet level agency. It's mostly tasked with distributing federal funds to local schools, particularly to low income and disabled students. What happens if the Department of Education is shut down? Like, practically speaking, given the fact that most education is run on the state and local level, what would it mean for the DOE to shut down?
You're right, Jake. I was a mayor and governor, and education is primarily state and local, but the federal government plays two really important roles. It provides funding for low-income schools, Title I, for school nutrition programs, and then significant funding for students with disabilities. What's going to happen to those funds? We don't know what's going to happen to them. We had the Secretary of Education nominee, Linda McMahon, before us, and I asked her a question about the second thing the department does. Hey, listen, who's going to enforce the federal laws guaranteeing students with disabilities get a high-quality education if you eliminate the department? Even if you send the money to states, if states don't follow the laws to really make sure that kids have the education they deserve, who will enforce it? And her answer was, I don't know. That doesn't give me a lot of confidence. And what we're going to need is those K-12 families to stand up. And then, as you know, the Department of Education also administers the Pell Grant program, public service loan forgiveness, and other important funding mechanisms for higher education. An awful lot of families could not afford to send their kids to school if it weren't for things like Pell Grants.
There is an overwhelming number of government jobs in Virginia, and Glenn Younan has surely picked the wrong war if he is trying to defend the mass firing of Virginians in his state, which is exactly what he actually did when he was asked about DOGE and the cuts that they're making to the workforce in the state he represents. He said this, talk about this federal
workforce downsizing. What are you doing to prevent these jobs from Virginians from losing jobs in the first place here?
Well, let me just begin with the fact is that I don't believe that the federal government downsizing is wrong. And in fact, we need to press forward and drive efficiencies in our federal government. And as a result, in driving those efficiencies, I do expect that some Virginians will lose.
I am not surprised that a Republican does not care about the people who elected them. Donald Trump is the shining example of that. An overwhelming number of Republicans use Medicaid, Social Security, and the social programs that Donald Trump is currently defunding alongside Elon Musk. So it's no surprise that Glenn Younan does not care that Virginians are being fired, losing their benefits, or that the state is working worse because of Donald Trump's actions. And I'm also not surprised that Virginians are letting Glenn Younan know they're not happy with it, quite literally running him out of town yesterday. Make sure you watch the full video, because you can see the part that's almost the most embarrassing for Glenn Younan. The man just, leaves his wife. He's just, trying to get out of there. He just can't take the booze. And good for the Democrats or the community leaders who are organizing these protests of elected officials. There's nothing wrong with a couple of boos. I know Donald Trump, Bondi, and Elon Musk might want to call this domestic terrorism for people using their voices. Donald Trump tried to threaten Jasmine Crockett yesterday because she was calling out Elon's attacks on our democracy. By the way, it's not, illegal yet to protest the unelected billionaire tearing apart our government. But I love that people are showing up and showing Republicans how upset they are. We know these people are spineless. So maybe we can get them to cave in our direction rather than Donald Trump's. Maybe they'll be more afraid of their constituents calling them out than of Donald Trump writing some mean post about them. This is the agency we still have left. And I think it is important that we shape this debate in the court of public opinion so that the people who aren't necessarily following politics bump into these videos of MAGA, Republicans getting protested, getting booed, getting mocked, so they understand that it is them who are responsible for breaking down the government and crashing the economy. Meanwhile, Republicans try to blame who? Senate Democrats and Joe Biden? Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. It's because they're running away, though. That's what they're doing. They're leaving this messaging vacuum vacant, and we need to fill it. And Democrats have been doing a good job with that. And someone who broke that all down was Chris Murphy. Sorry. Not Chris Murphy, but Chris A. is right here.
Confrontations like that are why party leadership has told House Republicans to avoid town hall meetings with voters altogether, just ignore them. And as a result, activists in multiple states like North Carolina and Maine and Pennsylvania and Arkansas held town halls, invited their House and Senate Republicans who no-showed, but the town halls went on anyway. In central Pennsylvania, constituents of Republican Scott Perry blasted him for his absence, shared their own frustrations like this woman who says her son was fired unjustly from his federal job.
For the Department of Education. He got axed. No. Opened up the computer, guess what? You're gone. Let me tell you what he did for the Department of Education. He reviewed contracts. He saved everybody in here thousands of tax dollars, and his evaluation was the top. Then I turn on the TV the next day, and there is Trump saying they were scum, no good people, what they got rid of. I am furious. Furious. Where is Scott Perry? Where's 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 Scott Perry?
As Republicans are avoiding their own voters at all costs, it looks like Democrats might actually be capitalizing on the vacuum left for them. We've got, of course, Sanders and AOC attracting thousands across the country. Then there's Minnesota Governor Tim Walz going on his own speaking and listening tour.
To be with our grandkids. We'd like to do this. We know this on the iPhone. They've got that little stock app. I added Tesla to it to give me a little boost during the day. 225 and dropping. So, and if you own one, we're not blaming you. You can take dental floss and pull the Tesla thing off, and take out, just telling you.
Democrats, too, are finding that when they show up for town halls, they're taking a punishing amount of rage from their constituents, too, for not doing enough. Much of that anger stems from the decision last week by Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer and 9 other Senate Democrats to pass Trump's funding bill and avert a government shutdown. Colorado Senator Michael Bennet was not one of them, and last night he suggested it might be time for new Democratic leadership.
I do think on the leadership question, it's always better to, examine whether folks are in the right place, and we're certainly going to have that conversation. It's important for people to know, when it's time to go.
There are a lot of people out there who are starving for real resistance, so much so that even the normally quite moderate, reserved Delaware Senator Chris Coons drew a line in the sand in his virtual town hall.
Look, we need your voices. We need your engagement. We need your support. And bluntly, if President Trump takes the next step and just blatantly ignores the orders of the court, we're going to need folks to come out to the streets.
It's impossible to deny what millions upon millions of Americans run right now, right? A hardened opposition against the Trump takeover unfurling day by day. And for all the feelings you may have gone through in recent weeks, there's no real resistance to Trump. There's no real hope. The vibes are shifting. They really are. People are speaking up and standing up. You are not alone. There's a movement afoot to save democracy, and it is rapidly gaining steam.
I want to see more and more Democrats doing exactly this, being out on the road in Republican districts, bringing people together to not just ease the concerns of those constituents, but push a broader message that breaks through to folks on social media and certainly the local news in those towns. And I was excited to see friend of the show, Robert Garcia, who's the chair of the Progressive Caucus in the House, announce that that's exactly what progressives are going to be doing, going out, delivering this message, and being the fighters that voters want right now. I'm thrilled about that. And I'm also excited that we might be talking to Robert Garcia about that tomorrow. We've got a couple of fun interviews lined up for y'all, so stay on the lookout for those. And if you want to, the best way to is to hit that subscribe button. You can also leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around until the end and enjoy these videos, of course you can drop a blue heart in the comments. Until next time, I'll see you soon.